I also think that flipping the switch in your brain from, oh my gosh, I'm too old, quote unquote, too old, no one's going to want to hire me, to my age is not a liability, it's an asset.
Hi, Maureen. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Can't complain. I
Good.
was wondering how you became interested in this particular niche. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, when I was 37 years old and working at a VC backed tech startup, my younger colleague referred to me as a dino. 37. Yeah. And he was kidding. He was kidding. We were friends. He was making a joke. And as you well know, I mean, ageist jokes and remarks are often all throughout our society, right? No one even like gives it a second thought. So,
Uh,
but what it did for me was it kind of sent me down this rabbit hole where I realized, oh my gosh, he's kind of right. Like I looked around and I was one of the oldest people at the organization. I thought, how can that be true? My CEO was younger than I was. Excuse me.
you were 37,
I was 37. I was 37.
and and you were the oldest person.
Not the oldest, but one
One
of the
of.
oldest
Okay.
people at the
It just
organization. And I thought,
wow.
how is this possible? Like, people are generally speaking living longer lives. No one's saving enough for retirement. Like, do people just kind of disappear? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. And what I realized was it wasn't just at this one organization that I'd noticed this pattern, it was throughout the entirety of my career, which also spanned industries, right? So it's something that I started talking about with people behind the scenes and started asking, like, is anyone else worried about like aging out? I'm using air quotes for those who are not watching, aging out of the industry. And it turns out pretty much everyone was like, yeah, it's a thing. And it struck me as quite bizarre that this is the one thing that if we are lucky, we will face, right? That this is one form of discrimination we will all face. And yet no one was discussing it. It's the elephant in the room. It's kind of right underneath the surface. And I thought, what a miss. And particularly in a time when people were starting to actually care, at least performatively at the corporate level, about diversity, equity, and inclusion, this was a very obvious miss. And so I said, you know what? This is something we can't just leave unsaid. We have to start working on this. And I'm going to start a conversation, which is why I started It Gets Late Early back in May of 2023.
Mm. And how has it been received?
Very well. I mean, one of my listeners posted on LinkedIn the other day. This is like chicken soup for the over 30 soul working in tech in the barren, layoff prone landscape, et cetera. So, this is something, I mean, people have all been feeling this, as you well know, working at AARP with AARP. The research is there to suggest that this sentiment is widespread and it's pernicious and it's persistent. And yet there really hadn't been a place for people to, in the workplace specifically, learn about this topic and feel validated in what they're experiencing. So it's been a real community that's been built, really, and people have been able to connect with one another, have been able to help network with one another, have been able to really understand that they're not alone in this, which was one of my main priorities with launching this. Was, if we're talking about ageism in the workplace, my sense is the first thing we need to do is start with awareness, because quite some number of people out there are ageist and don't even know it's a problem, right? The World
Right.
Health Organization says 1 in 2 people are ageist. And I think 50% of those people are lying, because frankly, we're
Right.
all a little bit ageist, and it's
Mm-hmm.
nobody's fault because we've been fed these narratives about getting older our entire existence, right? And
Mm-hmm.
even my own kids, they've said to me, "Hey mom, you're old." And like it's a burn, like it's some sort of diss, right? And I'm like, "Wait, who taught you that?" It certainly wasn't me. And I realized
Mm-hmm.
it's everywhere in media. I was actually watching Alvin and the Chipmunks on
Oh,
Netflix with my children,
wow.
and there was this entire storyline about how Dave, their dad, had been nominated for a Granny, Granny. And the Chipmunks were like, oh my gosh, he thinks he's been nominated for a Grammy, like the music award. How can we prevent him from going to this awards ceremony and getting totally humiliated because they're calling him old? And they like did everything to try and thwart him getting there. And then he goes, and this was the kind of like the nice aspect of it. He goes and he realizes it was for music legends, and he knew it was a Granny all the
Mm-hmm.
while. But
Uh-huh.
all of those narratives, I mean, that's being fed to our children, right? Like, oh
Right.
man, it's so embarrassing, you're old, right? So this is where
Mm-hmm.
it begins. And so we all have quite a bit of work to do internally to get those narratives out of our heads and start reframing the way we think about aging. So lots of work
Mm.
to do at the individual level. It starts with us.
I think I agree with you, and I think that it's a lot of work because it's coming in from so many different viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
It's in advertising. I mean, they'll do the token like one gray-haired woman with no lines on her face at
Right,
all,
right, right,
right?
exactly.
No
Like
wrinkles,
that's realistic, right?
not a sag. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, to social media, where I think it's kind of like a bit of an arms race almost, like TikTok and similar platforms. It's like everybody's racing to have the new thing that young people can do that old people
Yes.
can't have
Yes.
or
Yes.
don't get,
Right.
and then older people catch on and then I have to go on to the next thing because
Right.
it's this weird kind of progression.
So accurate.
But the question I have as it involves tech is that just part of the DNA of it? I mean, let's face it, tech is a it's like a shark. If it doesn't keep moving, it dies, right? And that continual rush towards the new and the different would possibly, I think, call out or create a bias for younger people with the assumption that
Mm-hmm.
younger people are more in the know than older people. So, having said that, how true is that misgiving? Is it
I
a
mean,
misgiving?
it is a misgiving. It's absolutely untrue that older people can't innovate. In fact, the top entrepreneurs of all, as referenced in a study in Harvard Business Review, the top performing startups were founded by people over age 45. And yet the VC world, venture capital world, glorifies youth and finds all of these wannabe next Mark Zuckerberg lookalikes. They're looking for the young founder. That's just part of the ethos of the funding mechanism system, which is the venture capital industry, right? And when you think about the fact, I mean, first of all, Mark Zuckerberg famously said when he was 22, young people are just smarter. He's 40 now, so welcome aboard, Zuck. I wonder if you're
Right.
going to change your perspective on that or
Mm-hmm.
not. But
Right.
so that's sort of the narrative. And to your point, it really hinges on this underlying stereotype of older people can't be in the know. They can't have the fresh ideas. They can't innovate or do these new things or be technologically savvy, and it's just not true, right? And we, as I guess the corporate America, I would say, and tech specifically, is doing a really poor job of pairing people up in different generations and of facilitating intergenerational collaboration. And they are leaving so much innovation and productivity off the table by doing that. It's such an own goal. And it's just, I don't understand why companies don't see the inherent value of having a blend of people of all ages and life experiences within their organization. So it's a huge miss.
So it sounds like some of this some of this trend is driven by the venture capitalists because they are looking for the young founders because they could be the next flavor of the month. And I don't know what we can do about venture capitalists who have that kind of mindset, but I'm wondering maybe you could talk a little bit about why they're wrong and what value older people have in the tech industry. What do they bring that's unique? Is
They
it just
bring,
institutional memory on top of
oh,
paint a picture?
absolutely. I mean, the knowledge that you amass, not only from being within one specific organization, but even from working across industries and frankly, just living, if you bring that to an organization, that pays off dividends. I mean, in so many different ways. And when you pair that sort of expertise and understanding how, common pitfalls emerge and ways to see around corners and trends developing because you have a history of working in this industry, and you pair that with people who are perhaps maybe a little bit earlier in their career, they might be younger, they might not. People graduate college at different ages, right? But bringing the newest sort of in the know key concepts from school and other training into the mix, when you pair that together, I mean, that's an exponential like knowledge boom, right? That is going to move your organization so much further along. And it's it's just one of those things, like I can't understand how we got to the point in the tech industry where it's like, okay, everyone knows that like experience should matter. You ask for a certain amount of experience when you are putting a job description together, but then it is at some point just kind of arbitrarily arbitrarily decided that that's too much, right? It's quite bizarre, but there's so much to be gained. And I mean, especially for a tech industry that claims to want to have, I mean, like openly prefers youth, it's strange to me that they don't give the people what they want. And what I mean by that is Gen Z is hungry for mentorship, and they're not doing it at organizations. So Adobe came out with a study recently that said essentially like 82% of Gen Z wanted a mentor and only 52% of Gen Z had one. I was shocked it was that high. But this is something that people want. We want to have mentorship. And by the way, it does go both ways. I have a Gen Z 28-year-old male coach named Eric Cruz. He teaches me so much. So there's so much to be gained on both sides of the coin, and your organization will do better, will move faster, it will 100% pay off. And I don't know why it's not rocket science. It's really not rocket science. But I think what I will say is it's hard, because when you have people who've grown up with different sort of generational norms,
Right.
you might be a big email person. On the other side of the coin, if you're Gen Z or millennial, perhaps you've done a lot of Slack, and the Slack people don't know how to talk to the email people and vice versa. Right. And LinkedIn did a study recently that said basically like a huge number of Gen Z people said that they'd not spoken to someone over the age of 50 in their organization in like a year. And it's like, gosh, what? You guys, what? Like, how can this be possible? We aren't pairing people up. We aren't facilitating connections, building bridges across different sort of generational divides by the way people communicate. And it gets into this sort of like us versus them intergenerational warfare, which is so ridiculous and unhelpful. And so and again, it all comes back to the individual, starting within, like, how do we view aging ourselves? How do we consider what life will be like when we're older? How do we have empathy for people who just so happen to be in a different life stage than we are? And really the central component of all it is like, how do we have a basic level of respect for people, regardless of where they are in their life's journey, right? So a lot of it really is that inner work. And, we all bring our authentic selves to work, for better or worse. So even if you have the best policies saying, hey, don't, be biased against people based on any of these, characteristics, people still come as themselves, and it infiltrates the organization. It might be not so necessarily obvious in the ways in which it does, but it's there. It's there. And it starts even before people are applying to jobs, right? Because the job descriptions that are out there, particularly in the tech industry, I mean, Virge, I'm kind of joking about this, but half of these jobs descriptions, it seems to me, are like, we're looking for a hungry ninja with fresh ideas who can wear 17 hats. And it's like, all of that is coded language for young, right?
Yeah.
And so it won't necessarily say outright, we want young people, although sometimes they do. Recently, I put a post up on LinkedIn that went pretty viral. I took a snapshot of an actual job post from a recruiting agency that literally said, we want 15 plus years of experience, or 20 plus, I can't remember exactly, but it said no geezers or job hoppers. It literally wrote no geezers.
No geezers?
No geezers, which is
wow.
like incredibly offensive, obviously.
Yeah.
And that was out there from a recruiting agency. And they should know better. Come on. Like, that is illegal.
Wow.
I mean, it's coded language again. I guess you could probably
that's not
have
code. That's an out and out
I mean,
slur.
I agree with you. Some people are like, oh, everyone's equivocating, saying, well, in Britain, geezer means something. And I'm like, okay, guys, well, this is a U.S. job posting. We know what this
yeah,
means,
right.
Right? Like, come on.
We're not there.
Come on. So it's out there. And then, other people have found required fields. And I've seen this myself too, because people will flag these job descriptions and application problems and they'll send them my way and they'll say, please amplify this, right? And so I'll go and check it out myself. And the truth is, like, in some of these organizations, they will put a required field for you to input your year of graduation. And then you can't have graduated earlier than like 1990. Like, you literally cannot apply unless you want to lie about your age on your application. You
Which
can't
is a whole
apply.
other
And it's
thing.
like, and they'll say that it's, oh, it was a coding error. We pulled over an internship, which again, you should be able to have interns of all ages, right? Like, haven't we seen the intern, right? With Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway? Come on.
Yeah.
But it's like everyone will have an excuse. And I'm sorry, they're not all accidents. These are real decisions being made by organizations to proactively exclude older workers. And guess what? The companies that aren't making it a good place for older workers to be, they're going to be left behind in the dust, because we are all getting a lot older really, really quickly. By 2030, I think it's going to be like 25% of the workforce is over age 55 or 60. That is the reality. And so the companies that are missing the mark here, this is a huge, I mean, they might not even survive, right? Not only will they not thrive, they might not survive. So it's time. It's time to get on board with reality.
Is there a how do I put this? Is there an aspect of tech that is particularly bad or particularly good in this area of hiring older people, retaining older people? I mean, tech is a very big waterfront. It could be AI, you know. I mean, are there areas where it's like a safe space for older people to keep jobs or to find a job? Or is that crazy?
You know, I've been hoping to find some like beacons of hope out there when it comes to this. The reality is every team is different, right? And there are organizations that are so massive, and frankly, so few of them actually proactively track this as something within the organizations. PwC came out with a study, it was, I think, in 2023, that said literally 92% of organizations out there that were surveyed do not include age as a factor in their inclusion programs. So they're not thinking about it proactively. They might be not thinking about it like on purpose, because the data would be pretty bad, is what I would say. So, you know, only 8% of companies are forward thinking enough to actually go and move towards this goal anyway. With that said, Atlassian comes out as a leader in this field. Back actually in 2016, they started measuring age diversity at their organization. And while they admitted, like, we aren't exactly where we want to be, it was top of mind for them. And they did try to come to the table doing this. I mean, other organizations, this is outside of tech, this is beauty, but beauty industry, as we know, is famously youth obsessed, right? Anti-aging everything, right? But L'Oreal is being very, very intentional with the way they're going about courting employees over age 50, and they've done campaigns about it. You know, people will perhaps say, oh, well, they don't have a representative group of people over age 50 at the organization, so this is kind of like gray washing. Someone, my friend termed that gray washing. But I think it's a really fine start, right? Like, this is, if we have big companies that are out there leading the charge towards age inclusion, I think that's a win. So whether they're representative yet or not, I think that's kind of beside the point. We want them to set the tone and encourage other companies to proactively court and retain people over age 50. And that's just like a smart business move at this point, truly. Not only should you court employees of older demographics, but you should also be focusing on serving customers, because older demographics, they're the ones with the money. Like, newsflash. Like,
some of us.
Right, some of us. That's true. That's true. But the reality is, like, this is not only the right thing to do morally, it's also a business imperative, right? And frankly, what moves the needle at any company now is whether it's going to increase shareholder value.
I see your point. There are many. I think there are aspects of tech that could really benefit from including older people in their market research and in their product research. You know, I write an open thread column twice a month. You know, it's just about topics to invite reader comment. And one of the big ones I got was, what are your complaints about technology? Oh boy. Well, yeah, and some of it was rooted in a frustration that older people have with the the hardware. The
Mm,
buttons are too small. The print is too small. There's not enough contrast. Um, I even had somebody say that they really missed something as simple as a book of instructions. Because
hmm
if you have a piece of technology and and something goes wrong, you need to get a piece of technology so you could find out how to
Right.
fix it or what to do about it. Um, and it's I don't know uh, how this could be addressed unless companies start bringing in older people in product testing and
Absolutely.
in development. And I do you see any of that happening? I mean, I think that Senior Planet would be a terrific opportunity for some smart company to invite people in who have some tech knowledge just to do a critique, just to do a trial run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think the smart companies are. I know it's especially in the age tech as a category, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you have the age tech collaborative at AARP, and I had a guest on my show named Kathy Minter, who is building a smart home tool called Wisdom.io, and she's an over 50 founder herself, but she intentionally went and she did a ton of focus group uh, activities with people who were older to ensure that what they were building was going to serve their needs. And that is how you build a better product. I think there's such a hubris to these companies that are run by younger people that think they know everything. No, no, you don't. You need to have people on your team who are going to point out things that you didn't notice because you haven't lived that stage of life yet. And you need to be talking to the customers who are going to buy your product, right? So some companies are thinking this way, others not so much. And certainly those in the age tech space, which I think is a category that has so much promise,
Oh, yeah.
they must. And I hope actually age tech as its own sort of vertical will help dispel some of the myths about people in tech not being savvy if they're over 50, because you're going to, by virtue of the subject matter alone, more likely have people who are older employed there using technology day in, day out, right? And AI, right? Like AI, it's whether we like it or not, it's the future. It's here. The genie is out of the bottle, and we all need to use it. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. And CEOs are now coming out and saying everybody on AI, it's mandatory. And oh, by the way, tell us how it works and how it's going, because we're still trying to figure that out. So the onus is on the worker
Uh-huh.
to get out there, learn, train. We're all going to be prompt engineers, is the reality.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of have a choice. It's like, are we going to embrace the opportunity, or are we going to keep it at an arm's length? And I know it's hard. I myself was like, oh gosh, another thing. Like, I have to figure this out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it also unlocks so much. And where I get excited is I realize that it democratizes access to entrepreneurship in a really big way. So
How
people
so?
of any age can go and can get on AI and have it accelerate them to heights that would have only been possible with a lot of capital. So that is compelling. I think there are obviously some downsides to that. Like I actually, a Business Insider article just came out today in which I was quoted, and I was like, yeah, well, tech industry traditionally loves Gen Z and loves the youth, but I think they love robots more, right? Because what are they trying to do? Make money, innovate, move fast, and break things. That's the ethos of Silicon Valley, right? And young people are getting left behind, which is really quite sad. But AI, it's obviously been in the works for quite some time. It's not new, but generative AI and its just absolute abundance and ubiquity around the world, right? That's a new thing. And so it's kind of open season. Anybody of any age can go out there and become extremely proficient in it. And that is a boon to them in their career, whether they decide to be an entrepreneur or whether they work within a corporate entity, right? That is a massive, massive win for them. So I think trying to shift into sort of that hopeful mentality about it can be really helpful.
What advice do you have for people who are older and want
Oh,
to keep their jobs or get a job
yep.
in tech? Is there hope?
So There is hope. There is hope for sure. I would say the most important thing is to show that you are an active learner, that you are proactively out there trying to gain new skills and showing how you can apply those new skills to the knowledge you've gained over time and how that's going to turbocharge your career or their initiatives in the future, right? Show it not it's not you shouldn't say like, "Oh, I have 20 years of experience doing XYZ." What's that mean?
Right.
Tell me what
Yeah.
you can do in the future moving forward, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that future facing sort of mentality is really critical. And that's a lot of that. The onus is on the individual, right? Companies right now, they're not really doing this. I wish they were. I think they will be doing more in the future. But right now, it's really up to us. So take control in that regard and give yourself the best education and upskilling and reskilling that you possibly can. And then I would highlight that on your resume as well as on LinkedIn. So that's the first thing I think that's really critical for people of all ages in the age of AI. I also think that flipping the switch in your brain from, oh my gosh, I'm too old, quote unquote, too old, no one's going to want to hire me, to my age is not a liability, it's an asset. And the right company is going to recognize that. And I will be there longer, be more loyal if I go to a company that wants and desires people who have wisdom of experience versus someone who doesn't really value that, right?
Right.
Now, that's a relative position of privilege, right? So sometimes you
Yeah.
just need a job. Yeah, and it doesn't really matter who it is, you need a paycheck
Right.
immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are in a position where you can be choosier and you can wait a little longer, I highly advise just being out there, being proud of. I mean, I think we should all be proud of our age, and it should be a badge of honor. We don't live in that world yet, and that is unfortunate. And I hope we'll be ever so slowly chipping away at that, and we will get there. But right now, we don't. So if you need a job right away, as much as it pains me to say, it is actually good advice to try to take some years of experience off your resume. Maybe don't list your college graduation dates.
Really? Right.
Yeah, tragically. And I will tell you, people in my audience will reach out to me and be like, I A B tested this concept. And as soon as I took my age identification markers off the table, what do you know? People started wanting to interview me. So if
How
you need
about
to
that?
increase, it's sad. It's sad. And I myself know the moment, and I'm not making this up, I used to be fortunate enough to get a ton of inbound, unsolicited interest from recruiters saying, please apply for my job.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about me changed. And by the way, I had not launched my podcast about ageism in the tech industry either.
Mm-hmm.
So take that off the plate too. But
Uh-huh.
nothing changed except for I turned 40. Those inbound inquiries, they dropped off a cliff.
Really?
They absolutely, and my friend had warned me, this is coming. You will no longer be as desirable a candidate. You won't get these, opportunities funneling your way in the way you used to. So that's real. I did a poll on LinkedIn recently. It was 60 something percent of people who said that it either fell off a cliff. It was 40 something percent that said it fell off a cliff at 40, and another percentage that said that equaled up to 60, 64, I think it was, that said that it dropped off a little. And then a good number, about a quarter of people said that things remained the same. And then, another group said, I can't remember, which is fair, which is
Ooh.
fair. But anyway, it's a thing. It's very real. And, some companies have actually gotten hit with lawsuits from the EEOC for categorically using AI to filter out candidates over
Um,
age 55 if
mm-hmm.
it's a woman, and over age 60 if it's a man, because everything's just a little worse for women, right?
Wow.
So yeah,
Oh,
so that happens. It does happen, and it happens way more than we know, unfortunately. So if you need a lot of at bats, it behooves you to just kind of remove some of that information, because you're going to get more people. 4 in 10 hiring managers say that they hire based, or they judge people based on their age. And a report came out in the Times that said recruiters, the ones who should know better,
yeah.
about 50% of them think 57 is, quote, too old to hire. Too old to hire at 57. So this is what we're up against. And this is
Really?
why, as much as I hate to say it, if you really need a job and you need those chances, it's a
Yeah.
good idea. So I don't like it, but it's the reality.
Do you see any evidence of entrepreneurship among people in this space who have aged out of that desirable range of hire? Have they just gone off to start their own companies? Is that
100%. That is absolutely what is happening. And those entrepreneurial efforts can include things from hanging a shingle and saying, hey, I'm a consultant doing XYZ based on the experience that you have, right? To full blown, entrepreneurship, starting a company, starting a startup, bootstrapping a startup often, right? Because VC still has the preference for youth. It's a little harder to raise money. There's ageism in VC fundraising, unfortunately. But this is happening. This is, I think, the future, really, because corporate longevity, corporate careers, the 20, 30 year career with a gold watch at the end, that's dead. There's not really such a thing as job security anymore. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all that that's where we are, but that is the reality. And so people are recognizing that they will probably face age discrimination at some point, right? This is kind of dawning on people. And they're starting to realize that the way the corporate landscape is shifting, the future of work is shifting, is more towards the Uberization, gigification of white collar work as well. So people are going to necessarily be picking up sort of project-based work. And it's a good idea. Everyone always says, and this is true, like it's easier to find a job when you have a job, right? And
True.
so if you have a running consultancy on your LinkedIn all the time, right? That is going to help you so much because you're never unemployed if you have a consultancy for yourself, right? So I highly advise doing that. And it's unfortunate because I abhor that we are in a place where side hustles are a good idea because we're all exhausted. We're all barely getting by, just trying to live, right? And I hate the concept of, oh, you got to do this other thing because sometimes life is just, it's hard enough to keep your full-time job, have a family, if you have a family, and do everything else that you need to do as an adult, right? But it's shifting so much that it's a very sound practice. It's a very, very sound practice. We didn't get into networking at all.
Well, why don't we? I was going to ask you about that, how CES
we haven't even gone
was.
there yet. So here's another aspect of being older that is a major win. When you're older, you know a ton of people, right? Throughout the entirety of your life and your career. You are connected to a plethora of folks, all of whom could help you get a foot in the door at organizations. That is a win. And it's something that I actually feel bad for younger people. They don't have that.
No.
And networking is a dirty word to a lot of people. But if you really just come at it, I know, a lot of people really, really dislike it. And if you come at it from more of a human perspective and really just think of it as, okay, we're all just trying to help one another out. We're all just trying to get by here. And, just lead with kindness, lead with openness, and try, of course, as much as possible to reciprocate and help people out. People are going to want to help you. Treat people kindly, reach out to them, and start before you need something, right?
Right. Start before you need something.
And far too few people do that. And I understand because, again, we're all juggling so much. We're all going a million miles an hour, and it's really, really hard to add one more thing on the plate. But this is the sort of thing that will pay off in spades later. So take the fact that you've been on the planet longer as a benefit in this regard, because you have the ability to spread out and check in with a ton of different people in your life that a lot of people, younger don't necessarily have. So that's a really huge benefit because we all know that it's a very hard job market. I mean, to say the very least, it's like a white collar recession. I feel like it's not spoken about enough exactly how bad it is out there right now for people and how much pain people are in. So your network is going to be something can really accelerate your ability to get interviews, right? It's still going to be super competitive, but we have to play, to our strengths. And when you're older, your network can be a strength. So highly recommend that people start thinking of their network in that way, start connecting with people, old colleagues, old bosses, old vendors with whom you work, partners. I mean, and even just people in your neighborhood that right? Like I have a great example. I had a friend who was looking for work for a long while. And where did he find his next job? Through the Little League coach that his kids' team was. Yes, that is how it happened. So it's like we shouldn't forget that our communities are also our networks. It doesn't have to only be thought of as just in the realm of, corporate.
Is there anything, what can older people do to help advance this particular ball in terms of dealing with ageism in the tech industry as workers, as consumers, as employees? Any thoughts on that?
I do. The first thing is to recognize that these stereotypes exist and don't play into them. So I would say if you're over 40, over 50, don't say things like, oh, I'm just not good with technology, or oh, I don't know anything about AI. While you
Mm-hmm.
might feel that's true, it doesn't advance the group as a whole to say
Uh-huh.
that out
All
loud.
right.
So don't let those stereotypes persist by playing into them. That's really
Right.
important.
Right. And your
Um,
language. Right.
yeah, your language, your mindset is really important. And that is not denying how tough it is out there, by the way. Like, I don't subscribe to toxic positivity. I abhor it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But it is true that if you can cultivate a little bit more hope, optimism, and, go get 'em attitude, that's going to help you. There is no
Ah.
question. And then make sure that you know the latest and greatest. Like, show that you are an eager learner, and that you are a lifelong learner, and that you're seeking advancement and going to the next level, because every organization wants people who are like that. That is the
Mm-hmm.
goal for organizations. So as much as you can showcase that and
Mm-hmm.
future focus, not just say, oh, I did all this in the past.
Right.
We don't care about the past. We care about the future. What are you going to do for this company?
Mm-hmm.
So that's also going to be helpful in debunking the stereotypes of, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, or,
Mm-hmm.
old people are stuck in their ways. All those things that people say that aren't really true, just don't play into them. Like, show that they're categorically false. Embody that in the way you show up in the workplace and in the way you show up in your job search, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's hard. I've had people who've reached out to me and have been like, I'm about to lose hope. Like, I've been at this for 12 months. I mean, people reach out in my audience. This is real. Like, there's a lot of hardship out there, and it absolutely breaks my heart. Sometimes it's overwhelming doing what I do, because the stories can be so tough. But I can't tell you also the number of people who've reached out and said, thank you for all of this conversation and providing us access to these experts and career coaches and what have you, because thinking through these various tips and tricks has helped me. And I was about to give up, and guess what? I just landed a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was losing faith. Oh my goodness, I was about to throw in the towel, and then I got the job, right? Or I built my own thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think concurrently, as much as possible, even though it's really hard, and I really want to validate that, it's really hard to build something on your own. Ask me how I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to likely be an imperative. And so as much as we can harness the hope from that, the fact that
Mm-hmm.
there will be a lot of older founders doing great things because they bring the perspective and the wisdom from having lived through all these years
Mm-hmm.
into the market, like what new things will be unfurled. And while I believe that AI is going to power a lot of those initially, eventually you're going to need humans. And so that will
Yeah.
unfurl jobs into the market from people who really understand the value of wisdom. So I'm hopeful on that front too. But
Are there any, you talk about being an eager learner.
yes,
Are you referring to like certificate programs or licensing or something like that?
right. So
Being a project, getting a PMP, or could you
I'm
elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I mean, lynda.com was purchased by LinkedIn, and that's an excellent place to go and get upskilled or reskilled on various different subjects. And so you can go and look and see, I mean, they have every course under the sun. And certainly
Mm-hmm.
there are other institutions that do that as well. But I think that's a super accessible one, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody is on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you're not on LinkedIn, listen to me now, go on LinkedIn. Like,
Ah,
everybody, even if you just have fairly a shell profile. I'm not saying everyone has to go out there and become a quote unquote thought leader,
yeah.
but which is not for everybody. And certainly I think there are a lot of quote unquote thought leaders that I'm like, self-proclaimed,
Yeah.
let's put it that way. But you need to be there, because 90% of recruiters look on LinkedIn.
Mm,
And by the way, if you want to figure out who you know at companies, there's
mm,
no way to do it
right.
other than LinkedIn. And if you're not figuring out who you know at companies, you're doing it wrong, right? You're
Right.
applying to the ATS black hole. That works
Mm,
sometimes,
mm,
right? but it also screens out people who are older. We know that. We've seen it in practice. So help yourself out. Give yourself a profile, fill it out, start
Hmm.
connecting with people. And I'm sure for a lot of people that will sound so overwhelming because, oh gosh, I haven't been on LinkedIn or I haven't been active or whatnot. You know what? The second best time to start is today. Let's
Yeah.
do it, right? It is going to help you. It is going to open up new avenues for you. It's going to open your mind, and you know, social media gets a bad rap for a very good reason, and LinkedIn certainly there are issues with it as well. But I would say it's the one social platform where you can go and feel slightly good about what you're doing there because you can pick up a
Okay.
thing or two,
All
right? When
right.
you're on there, like you're like, oh, that's reasonably good advice, or oh, cool insight, or I should go check out that article, or maybe I'll go take that course, right?
Mm.
There, and it all boosts your network. And there have been incredible human beings that I've met via
Hmm.
LinkedIn just
Hmm.
connecting. So I've had multiple guests come on my show from there. I mean, it's really it's not that bad. So I'd say get
It's
on.
not that bad.
It's
Okay.
not that bad. Come on, jump in. The water's fine. But it's I think it's an imperative for people who are looking for roles. Absolutely. And if you want to start something on your own, it's
Hmm.
also another great place to be because you can establish, some degree of thought leadership, if you will, or create a platform for the product or service that you're going to be selling on LinkedIn. So you can absolutely go to YouTube and learn all sorts of things about AI or any other skill. There are programs out there that exist that you can go and pay and be part of it, coaching cohort to upskill or reskill. Certainly, there are ones that help women who've gone and become, caregivers for a while and come back. Um, that's another that is pretty prominent, I think, out there in terms of availability. But when it comes to showcasing what you've done, I think to your earlier question, it's wise to find those that have a certificate or a program, and the easiest place to do that is LinkedIn.
Um, it's interesting to see in real time uh, the whole issue of ageism getting ramped up a generation.
Hmm.
I mean, now ageism is now something that's not just a phenomenon when you're 50 or 60. It's now when you're 30 or 40.
Hmm.
What can you? I guess what I'm wondering is what's the head trip around that? I mean, how are people handling that? Is it making them? Do you think that it's making them more compassionate dealing with people who are in their 60s or their 70s? Does it make them more empathetic?
I love that question. And I actually want to broaden the scope of ageism slightly because it's actually women in their 20s feeling it the most. There was a survey that came out
What?
called this, yeah, the
Whoa, whoa,
state of
whoa.
women in the workplace came out with McKinsey and Lean Org. And it's young women who feel ageism the most. And they feel it at a rate that's higher than men their age, right? And part of me, I kind of laughed a little when it came out because I was like, oh, I don't think we know. Like, and I say we, I'm 42, but I'm like, oh wait, women in their 20s are saying they're feeling this. Just wait till they're 60, and
Oh,
they say it's so, and it's not like they're saying it's worse for them. They don't know. They've never been 60, but they
yeah.
report it at a higher rate. And
How
so I
about that?
wonder exactly how that survey was conducted and
Oh, yeah.
how they got that. That shocked me. But the point is the bias against someone based on their age and discounting someone based on their age, whether that's too young or too old, women are never the right
Yeah,
age.
we're never the right age.
We're never the right age. And it's absurd. And Jessica Gross, the New York Times columnist, put it the best. She said,
Mhm.
she had an article called The Hour Between Babe and Hag. And I was like, if that doesn't nail it, I don't know what. Come on. That's just
Wow.
perfect.
Hmm.
So women are walking this tightrope, right? And
Hmm.
so they face ageism pretty much across their whole career, which is
Right.
great, great fun. But my hope is that the fact that younger people are aware of this and they're seeing it will, in fact, add empathy into the equation. Because as we sort of touched on earlier, there's a lot of intergenerational warfare. The
Mm-hmm.
boomers are
Oh
saying,
gosh.
and all these are clickbait headlines, right? I think there's a place for generational labels, but they're unfortunately often used to just deepen stereotypes and make jokes. But
Mm-hmm.
it's very frequent that I see on social media boomers saying kids these days don't know how to work, and then Gen Z saying, well, gosh, they're so like they don't know anything or whatever, grandma,
Right.
move over, right? Like you see both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that the awareness build about ageism is going to dissipate some of that, and we're going to start getting to a basic level of respect. And I don't know how we got here, Virge. It's so bizarre to me. I was always told respect your elders,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about even the genesis of It Gets Late Early. It's a reference to how I feel about
Mm-hmm.
life passing me by. It gets late early, you're
Mm-hmm.
old quick. Like
Yeah.
here we are. I'm old at 37, air quotes. What a joke. But that's a baseball reference. And I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that because it was a Yogi Berra said it gets late early out
Oh.
there. And so
Mm-hmm.
New York, we got to throw it back. But and I used to go to baseball games with my late grandfather who lived till he was 97. And
Mm-hmm.
I had such a close relationship with him and
Mm-hmm.
such a reverence from a young age for older people because I found them more interesting. They'd lived more life. They had more to share. They had wisdom to
Mm-hmm.
dispel. Like I'd get like a play date invite when I was in elementary school, and I'd go and I'd sit in the kitchen with the person's parents and chat with them instead of playing with my school aged
Really?
friend.
That's
Didn't make me
charming.
very popular, but I've always really admired and loved older
Mm-hmm.
people and sought them out. So it's just something that comes naturally to me. But apparently that's not the case everywhere else. But so all this is to say, there is a movement happening right now with ageism. We are
Mm-hmm.
on the very beginning of the wave, and it's taking off. We're seeing it in mainstream media. We're seeing Brooke Shields came out with a book called Brooke Shields is Not Allowed to Get Old. We saw Demi
Right.
Moore in The Substance. We saw
Right.
Pamela Anderson in The Last Showgirl. There's this moment where midlife and beyond women and men, but I would
Mm-hmm.
say like maybe more women
Yeah.
are in the spotlight, and they're not moving to the sidelines. They're saying, nope, this is my main character moment. We are going. And
Mm-hmm.
I think while that is, Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Hollywood kind of matters. It's the whole if you can see it, you can be it thing. And
Right.
so,
Mm-hmm.
certainly people have taken issue with the fact that the women who, by and large, are in these positions, right? They look like Demi Moore in The Substance was 63 years old playing a 50-year-old because she's Demi Moore and she's in
Right.
Hollywood. And it's
Yeah.
like, people are like, well, that's unrealistic. I'm like, okay, but it's a start, right? Like, let's applaud the start. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, they are speaking out about ageism in Hollywood. Of course, they have the privilege to do so. It's different for someone who makes millions of dollars a year to be out there and be like, I'm 65 and proud,
Right.
versus someone who's trying to get a job in the tech industry,
Right.
right?
Yeah. That's true.
But it's starting the conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm ultimately really excited because I think we're embracing the concept of like life is getting longer. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not equally, as I discuss in an upcoming
Mm-hmm.
interview with Deb Whitman, the Chief Public Policy Officer of AARP. It's
Mm-hmm.
not equal, unfortunately. Your zip code has more to do with your life expectancy than pretty much anything else, which is awful. But we are talking about aging and living in a way that I think is going to be really helpful for literally everyone. And then you think about that in 2023, the top podcast on Apple Podcasts of all was Wiser Than Me by Elaine from Seinfeld, Julia Louis Dreyfus, where she
Mm-hmm.
just talks to older, wiser women. That was the number one podcast.
Really.
So people are hungry for this narrative and for the examples of people who've come before them. Like, I believe there's a reverence building for people who are older, and there's a reshifting in the way and the narrative that we have about getting older. And I love that. So ultimately, I'm really hopeful. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that all trickles down into tech. And also, I think that the demographic shift that
Mm-hmm.
we're in right now,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's going to have to change the equation because they're not going to have anyone to fill the jobs in the tech industry
Right.
if they don't start incorporating older workers. So, I mean, that for me is all extremely hopeful, as is the fact that, I mean, I don't love that there's a horrible white collar recession right now. I don't love that there are layoffs in abundance. I don't love
Mm-hmm.
that the story that we're not hearing is that the layoffs are impacting disproportionately older workers over age 40.
Yeah.
I don't love that we're not hearing about that. I don't know if we will hear about that because I'm not sure anyone wants to publicize that data. But
Probably not.
there will be more entrepreneurs over age 40. That's a, necessity is the mother of invention. Downturns create lots of different new startups. We're going to see a lot of older entrepreneurs and solopreneurs coming out. So there's definitely some reason for hope. There really is. And I think we all need to cling to hope.
From your mouth to God's ear. Thank you very much. It was a
you're so
really
welcome.
Wonderfully interesting conversation.
I'm so glad.
I learned a lot. I'm sure our
good.
listeners will as well. Where can people find you if they want to know more about aging in the tech space, either to share tips or war stories or, just get a sense of community? How do we find you?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can go to my profile and it's Maureen Wiley Clough. And I also have a website called It Gets Late Early. So itgetslateearly.com. There's a newsletter, there's a podcast. You can listen to it on any platform, including YouTube. So be a part of the conversation there. And I'm soon to launch a Substack, which apparently is like where everyone is these days. So I got to hop on the bandwagon.
There you go.
Yeah, please check me out on any of those. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram. So. And Threads. I'm also starting to offer corporate workshops and speaking engagements. So if your team actually cares about this topic, and by the way, you and your company leadership, you all should. So if you care about this and you want to have a conversation from a simple lunch and learn to a full-blown workshop to just a speech, I'm available for that and looking forward to doing that. I've spoken at Disrupt HR and have worked with the London School of Economics to share insights on this front. And I would love to come and talk to your team about why it matters.
Thanks a lot. It was great to talk to you,
Thank you. This was so much fun. I loved it.
I enjoyed it too.